The air in the federal courtroom was so thick that it was almost like everyone's heart was beating at the same time. The room was full to the brim. Reporters sat next to each other with their pens shaking above their notepads. Video teams outside the doors fought over every view. Of the people in the front row, families of the dead held photos of their loved ones while shaking. It looked like the walls were closing in on us every second. Sean Diddy Combs was at the defense table. As he stood in court in his orange jail jumpsuit, the bright fabric seemed to glow in the harsh light. He didn't look at all like the man who used to rule the charts, the music business, and fashion. He had a huge business, but here, without anything, he looked small. He had his hands clenched together in front of him, making his fingers white. His jaw was locked, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. It was impossible to hear anything. It was so loud that the drop of a pen would have been heard like thunder. Then all of a sudden, the back double doors opened and the room stopped moving. Judge Aaron Subramanian walked in with his black robe flowing behind him. His face was hard to read, but it was heavy with power. Every whisper stopped right away. Families and reporters stopped what they were doing and looked straight at the bench. Diddy's red, swollen eyes darted up for a split second as his head turned a little, before hitting the smooth wood of the defensive table again. Marcus, his lawyer, leaned in close and whispered something to Diddy, but the singer didn't answer. His whole attention was on the man who was about to make a decision about him. There was a lot of chaos outside the building. People at the protest screamed, with some calling for justice and others protecting Diddy's name. The sound of their voices crashing together was like waves hitting rocks. Along the street, satellite cars were parked and helicopters flew above. A huge number of people around the world were eagerly watching, waiting, and checking their screens to find out what was going on inside these four walls. Not so inside, where it was just quiet and tense. Judge Subramanian took a seat, put down a thick folder in front of him, and adjusted his glasses. He looked around the room, but his attention kept going to the gallery, where families were sitting stiffly with tissues in their hands, waiting for the moment they had been fighting for. Then he looked over to the defense table and locked on Diddy. When Diddy finally looked into the judge's eyes for that 1 second, he seemed to understand something that no one else had the guts to say. The road ended here. The man who used to be in charge of stages, who built a kingdom piece by piece, and who thought no one could hurt him, stood here, helpless. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon before we go any further with this amazing video. That way you'll never miss another video like this one. Let's do it again. The quiet was broken by a single cough from the gallery. A guard moved around close to the door. He looked through his notes with his lips pressed together in a thin line. Marcus reached across the room for a glass of water but put it down without drinking anything. His hand was shaking a little. That room was full of people who knew what was going to happen could not be changed by money, fame, or power, as if each word inside held the weight of a lifetime. The judge slowly opened the folder and turned through each page with great care. The tension grew as he breathed slowly and calmly. The walls seemed to get tighter, the lights seemed brighter, and the silence got louder with each page turn. Diddy took a quick look back over his shoulder. He looked over and saw his mother sitting between his kids. She held on tight to a cloth with her weak hands. His youngest daughter buried her face in her aunt's shoulder, her little body shaking. Tears ran quietly down her cheeks, and the sight broke his heart. He quickly turned away, trying to hide the tears in his eyes. The outside world was no longer important. There was nothing that the cameras, the headlines, or the hashtags could do to change the fact that tomorrow would decide everything. The judge still didn't say anything. He turned the last page over and put his hand on the cover. Even though his face didn't say anything, the stop he took made the tension in the courtroom almost unbearable. Everyone knew the time was almost up. Sean Combs built a kingdom that was about to fall apart. After that, things would never be the same again. It looked like the lawyer knew how important the words he was about to say because he slowly got up from his seat. There was less noise in the courtroom, which was already tense. As he took a step forward, you could hear the wooden floor creak under his shoes. His stance was stiff, and his eyes were sharp and fixed. He leaned in a little and put his hand on the podium. He then looked around the crowd and the defense table until he found Diddy. He began, "Your Honor." His voice was steady but cold, cutting through the quiet like a knife. It's not about music in this case. It's not about getting famous. It's not about the famous Sean Combs. There was a man named Sean Combs who thought no one could hurt him. His words hung heavy in the air, and people in the room naturally leaned forward because of the way he spoke. He raised his voice with each word as he pointed to the defensive table. This man built a kingdom of power, wealth, and influence over many years. There were choices, though, behind the lights, the prizes, and the picture. Choices made on purpose. People made decisions that hurt others, ended lives, and left scars that will never go away. He stopped and took a quick look at the family of the victims sitting in the front row. A mother held a picture so tightly to her chest that it was starting to crumple. Her teary face shook with every word. There was another man who clenched his teeth and dug his hands into his thighs. Because they were in pain, the prosecutor's words got louder. With a hand gesture, he told them that these families had been waiting years for this day. Even though he didn't follow the rules like the rest of us, they lived in fear of what he might do. But now Sean Combs is held responsible, which is how all men should be when they break the law. Diddy moved around a little in his chair. He dropped his head and breathed heavily. For the first time, the confidence mask seemed to fall off, and fear took its place. The prosecutor's voice got sharper, like lightning. It's not about getting even. It's about being fair, and we need to send a word for justice's sake. A message for all the victims who have had to wait too long for their opinions to be heard. A message to all the strong men who believe that their fame protects them. Also, a message for Sean Combs. You are not above the law. The gallery was filled with feeling, a low hum of agreement from some, silent tears from other people. Reporters scrawled quickly, their pens skittering across the paper as if they were trying to keep up with how important each word was. This court cannot let wealth change the rules, the lawyer said, lowering his voice to a chilling level of calm. That power can't be used to buy silence. Power can't take away pain. He moved closer to the judge and fixed his gaze on them. Your Honor, we are asking for the harshest punishment possible because anything less would be a failure for everyone who believes in justice, not just these victims. The words seemed to echo through the walls and then fade into the background noise. Marcus Diddy, Diddy's lawyer, sat next to him with his mouth set and a pen in his hand that was shaking a little. He leaned in close to Diddy and quickly whispered something. Diddy didn't answer, though. His face was still, and his eyes were fixed on something outside the courtroom. It looked like he was trying hard to keep himself together. He looked at the gallery one more time, and this time his voice was softer, but still strong. They've had to deal with the effects of his choices for too long. Today, they deserve to be punished. The world needs fairness right now. He took a slow step back and let his last words linger in the air like smoke. There was a thick, unbroken quiet. Outside, the noise of chants and camera shutters seemed to go through the walls of the building. But inside, time stopped for a moment. The bench caught everyone's attention. Even though Judge Subramanian's face was blank because he had his hands on the folder in front of him, the prosecutor's words hung heavy in the silence. And as the quiet grew, everyone knew that things were more important than ever. Marcus Hill, Diddy's main lawyer, stood slowly and almost reluctantly, as if getting up were the impossible task of 1,000 worlds. The mood in the courtroom changed right away. The prosecutor's words had just burned the room with anxiety. Now, everyone looked at Marcus, trying to read his face for faith, resistance, or hope. Anything that could stop what everyone thought was going to happen. He took slow, steady steps toward the stage. One hand was holding on to his notes, and the other hand was shaking slightly by his side. He put the papers down but didn't look at them. Instead, he gripped the ends of the podium as if he were trying to stay steady as the waves crashed around them. After taking a big breath in, he spoke in a low, deliberate, and heavy with meaning voice. His voice was so low that it was almost a whisper, Your Honor. I'm not just here to defend Sean Combs today, the famous person, the artist, and the businessman. However, Sean Combs is a real person. He stopped speaking and looked around the gallery while the quiet filled the room. Families of the victims clutch photos. The reporters hunch over. Diddy was sitting at the defense table behind him. He bowed his head. The orange jail jumpsuit stood out against the shiny wood around him. Marcus kept his speech steady, and the tone of it got stronger. Yes, Sean Combs did wrong. It is true that decisions were made that hurt people. The pain was real, but Your Honor, we can't judge a person's whole life by their worst times. He waved his hand briefly toward Diddy and his voice got softer. He has made chances where there weren't any, helped communities when he didn't have to, and offered hope, jobs, and futures to thousands of people who didn't have them before. That doesn't get rid of the wrongs, but it also can't be undone. When Marcus said those words, Diddy slightly raised his head and locked his glassy eyes on him. He had a faint look of thanks on his face. Marcus turned to face the families of the victims and spoke directly to them, his voice breaking a little. I hear you. People who have been hurt. Sean can hear you. Know this. Nothing we say today can take away your pain. It's on his back, every day, and he will continue to carry it. The room stayed silent, but the tension had shifted, grief and anger clashing silently in the charged air. A few sniffles broke through the stillness, others simply sat stone-faced, unflinching. Marcus turned back to the judge, his tone deepening, resonant now. We are not asking for forgiveness, Your Honor. We are not asking for freedom without consequence. We are asking for balance. We are asking for justice that recognizes not only the pain, but the possibility of redemption. He stepped closer to the bench, his voice rising with emotion. A life sentence would not just punish Sean Combs, it would punish his children, his family. It would destroy any chance of restoration, any possibility of proving that a man who falls can rise again. Behind him, Diddy's mother wiped silent tears from her cheeks, clutching her daughter's hand for strength. One of Diddy's sons stared blankly at the floor, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. Marcus's voice cracked now, but he pressed on, leaning into the moment with everything he had left. Your Honor, this man has lost everything. The empire he built is crumbling. His name, his fatwa,